Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright. And Andy, I've thought about it, and I really do want to be here.
Oh, good. Today we're talking about Minute 64, which begins with Loki craving power and vengeance, and ends with Loki expanding Agent Barton's mind. Back on the show, it's Travis Bowe. Hello, Travis.
Hello there.
All right, we're wrapping up our conversation with Thor and Fury, with Coulson just kind of looking on. This is this point when Fury is really kind of pushing at Thor, trying to get him to be part of the team, I suppose, is what's happening here. I mean, how does this conversation... I know you really are a fan of the conversation with Coulson and Thor. Now that it's shifted to really this conversation between Thor and Nick Fury, yeah, how does this play for you?
It at first, oh boy, where to start? At first, I was still a little, like, Fury, why'd you have to ruin this moment? Leave me and Thor and Coulson, and part of it's like, it's a little like, what are you getting at here, Fury? Why are you talking about war? You yada yada. And then I guess I have to back up, and because for the longest time, I could not understand what Thor was saying. The words, there's no pain would prize his need from him. No idea. I thought, prize? Okay, like a trophy, because I did not understand what he was saying here. I'm sure we'll get into that.
The word is prize, Prise. It means, right, to pry.
Pry, yeah. So then this whole thing about being, what are you prepared to do? And then cutting from here to Black Widow and Loki. Shouldn't this be Thor and Loki having a conversation? Shouldn't Fury be trying to urge Thor into this confrontation? So that feels a little weird to have this, the end of this conversation with Thor and Fury, to then cut to two other people. I don't know. So I don't know how I feel about this.
I have feelings too, and they're confused as well. And part of it is because Thor leans in so hard on Loki's drive for vengeance against him, and I continuously forget that. Like, right. It feels like Loki is motivated by so many other things, like, drive for power, but vengeance against Thor? It just feels a little narcissistic, Thor. Honestly, I think Loki would, let's just say Thor were out of the picture. I think Loki would still be doing this thing. I feels like he would still be there. Am I totally out of line?
I bet he thinks this plot is about him.
Yeah. Don't you? Andy, you got to keep up. We're doing a bit.
Yeah, no, I think it's Thor's vanity. He's not fully humbled, he still has some vanity.
Yes.
And can only think that Loki is still just trying to get out of Thor's shadow and still resenting him for all that.
That's right, because in his youth, he courted war, he says, looking at himself in a mirror and brushing his hair over his shoulder.
Well, here's the thing. As far as Loki knows, he's the one who actually gives us the answer as to how Thor got here, that, the All-Father used the dark energy, dark magic, whatever, to get him here because the Rainbow Bridge is broken. The Bifrost is no more. And so he obviously knows there is a way to get here, although they have to pay a price to do it. It's a heavy toll to kind of use that much to get Thor here. So I don't know how much Loki thinks that they're actually paying attention to Midgard at this point in time, other than the fact that in the comics there was this moment where Frigga reaches out to him. She finds him in Sanctuary, reaches out to him. He refuses to talk to her, but she knows that he's alive now, and she's the one who tells Odin and Thor that he's alive, and I believe Heimdall is the one who finds him on Earth, which is why they send him there. So all of that is kind of there as far as kind of plot from the comics. But from what we get here in the film, Loki comes down to Midgard, I kind of have this sense that even if he was here and assumed that Thor had no idea that he was on Midgard, I do kind of have this sense that knowing that Thor has this idea of being the protector of Midgard and all of this that we got from the movie, Loki would see that as a great reason to decide he's going to make Midgard his own. And even if Thor is gone, just the fact that he could claim it as his own, I think would give him a lot of joy.
Sure.
Yeah, I think so. And so that makes Thor's entire perspective here just more rich because it is so narcissistic, like in this moment that really, come on, man, like we're all fighting the same battle. It's not all about your family. So.
Well, obviously, from Thor's perspective, there's no pain that would prize this need from Loki. Like, all Loki cares about is this vengeance. It is so focused on, like, it. I mean, because he says it's not just the power; it's really like vengeance, and nothing will make him stop. Is really kind of the way that he's selling it. So,
no amount of torture, coercion, pain is gonna pry his need or his Loki. So what is Loki's need? Loki's need is to upstage Thor, to take control of Midgard,
But those are two interestingly different things, because I know that in the comics there is much more of and even in the last movie there was much more of a brother against brother kind of vibe, but I don't think that is sold well in this movie. I think that it's asking a lot of past movies to carry the weight of this, the brother animosity. And I don't think this movie does that well.
No, it doesn't. And it also, like, this scene kind of confuses it a little bit, because if it is really vengeance, I mean, what Thor is saying is like, look, you already caught him. He's a prisoner now, so there's really nothing I have to do. What do you want me to do? Torture him? We just need to find the Tesseract and I can leave. That's basically his whole thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I don't know, the way that Fury hit that line, which I like to a certain extent because it does fit with the vibe that this team isn't working well yet. But, like, why do I feel like he's the only person on this boat that wants to be here?
It's a good line.
It's a great line, but It does kind of, like, as far as Thor is concerned, it's like there is some confusion in there as far as, like, well, yeah, but you have him. I just need the Tesseract. What are you telling me? Fury is so roundabout in his asking of Thor to help here. And this, I think, is something that I don't know if it's because Samuel L. Jackson just delivers these sorts of lines, like, really well, that just makes it so easy to watch. But I don't know. I think that it's interesting how he just kind of keeps spinning this around, throwing everything back at Thor. Like, like, what are you asking me to do? I'm asking, what are you prepared to do? It's like, just tell me what you want me to do.
Well, I think it's interesting that you guys both skipped the line that hits me right between the eyes. It makes me squint. It makes my face pucker. It's fascist Fury saying a lot of guys think that until the pain starts.
Right.
Fury he's really suggesting now that he is open to torturing Loki, god of Asgard?
Absolutely. That is what Fury wants in this moment, is for Thor to go in there and
do whatever it takes.
And throw Loki all around that impressive cage.
Yeah.
That's what Fury wants right now. And yeah, he's not getting that across, or Thor is essentially, yeah, he's refusing. He's saying that no amount of torture is going to make Loki talk.
Yeah.
This moment really is a lot like, not this moment, but this, this same summer, you've got The Dark Knight. Or no, that was 2008.
Yeah, that was...
yeah, because that and Iron Man came out.
Right.
Okay. I always think that Avengers and Dark Knight came out, but both movies have... The villain gets apprehended, gets put in a prison, is exactly where he wants to be.
But this is interesting, too, in this sequence. Like, it's blocked in such a way that Fury, as a representative of a domestic, U.S. domestic, now global military organization, is moving down this road of we're going to go ahead and use enhanced interrogation techniques, right? This is when the pain starts. Meanwhile, Steve is sniffing out a cover-up in the giant warehouse room and starts to sort of bifurcate their roles together. And so it or roles from one another as hero and potentially villain. And I think that's a really interesting way to structure it. It makes this scene funky, but I do think it's interesting, the paths that they're on.
I really wish Steve was in this scene. I wish he would pipe up and say, "Are you talking about torture? Because we don't do that."
Yeah, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what we need said at some point. And I think we get a little bit of that soon.
Yeah. Well, and they kind of say it because they never do try to torture Loki.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're talking about it, and it just makes you wonder, like, I guess the point is we will never know where the further plans were, because obviously Loki had ulterior motives and had a plan of his own that is already taking place. We'll find out, that within the next 10 minutes, that something is happening from his side of things. And I think that potentially would disrupt anything that they were trying to do as far as Loki. Like maybe if Clint didn't show up, maybe we would have ended up in a situation where he was directly telling Thor, I want you to go in there and get the answer from him.
Yeah.
So,
did you guys ever have a hard time literally understanding what Thor said there with there's no pain that rises need from him? Okay.
Yeah, I kept thinking that he was saying that he said, pry this need from him. But then I'm like, well, it does sound like there's an extra S in there. So I'm like, is that just the way that Chris Hemsworth is saying it? And then I looked at the script and I'm like, oh, no, I guess it is prize this need from him.
Yeah. It's that, like, not even Stan Lee, when he was writing Shakespearean, dialogue for Thor, I think they didn't even come up with like confusing lines like this.
Yeah, and that was something that I was thinking about as I was listening to Thor. I'm like, is this definitely a sign of different writers coming in to write the character? Because I didn't really have any of these struggles in Thor when we were talking about a very Shakespearean take on kind of that story with the big language and everything, but it wasn't as confused as this is.
Yeah, I think it's this I think is just the director/writer wanting to get some of that Shakespearean word salad in here for Thor, I guess.
I guess that's what they're aiming for. So, well, we go from this moment to another moment, I guess you could say. We're talking about Loki, and of course we cut to Loki. And this is kind of, we've seen these transitions before. We were looking at Eric and talking about him and Jane, and then we cut to Jane on the computer. And now the same thing, they're talking about Loki, and Loki, we see him now. He is in his prison, and lo and behold, he smiles and is surprised pleasantly because Natasha has snuck up on him. And, I don't know. Is this just a skill set of hers? Like, she can't just walk in, she needs to sneak in? Is there a reason that it's portrayed this way?
I like thinking of it that way more than anything in the world. Like, this is her power that she can't turn off. She's always sneaking around.
Yeah. I think it's a nice shorthand. We can visually display her skill, but I do think that the way they frame it, by keeping the focus on Loki and then him realizing what's happened and then cutting, moving the camera down to show this empty space, or this space where she's standing. If they had panned across that same space and she wasn't there, and then we come back and she suddenly is, that would work a lot better than keeping the frame on Loki and then showing us somewhere that we haven't already seen. It's not as impressive if we don't know if she was already standing there, you know?
Yeah, and he just didn't notice, right? She could have been standing there for 10 minutes, and he was just he was not looking.
That does make it funny.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to show the blank space where she is going to be.
Yeah.
You know, pan away, then pan with him so that where she's going to be standing is out of frame, and then cut back and she's suddenly there. And then it is a how did she get there so fast? But the way they frame it now, I don't know that she wasn't already standing there.
I mean, yeah, for blocking purposes, it was probably easier to just say, I mean, maybe they might have had Scarlett Johansson duck just to make it easier, just in case the camera did dip down.
Sure.
But largely, the way that they frame it, she really wouldn't have had to. Like, she is so far below the frame that when it tips down, it's like, yeah, she could have been totally fine just standing there and not having to worry about it.
I like the idea, though, of Loki not noticing her for 5 minutes and then saying aloud, "Not many people sneak up on me, though." Like, I think that's funny.
How long have you been standing there?
Yeah, right.
To the point where she's finally tapping her foot, like, come on, how long is it going to take this idiot?
Beep, 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 beep. Like, you start making stupid sounds.
I was thinking about this as far as her sneaking in, because if she sneaks in, like, I mean, looking at the way that the layout of the room is, like when we see, especially when she leaves, we'll see it better. There's like stairs on either side, and down at the end, there's a doorway. I'm assuming that the door makes a noise when it opens and closes, and that's kind of would be Loki's signal that somebody is coming or going. And so it does make me wonder, like, how did she get in here if she wasn't coming in through the doors, you know, because like she would have to have some other stealthy secret way to kind of get in here.
Well, Cap's already proven that these, you know, steel doors can be opened without anyone noticing.
That's true.
Yes.
Well, then maybe that's what it is. She had to break it so nobody heard it.
Yeah.
And also, how do we know it's just not open in the bottom and she climbed in from the outside of the ship?
Yeah. She scaled the outside of the ship.
She scaled the transparent.
But I like the idea that she knows of some secret passageways, some little air duct, you know, that she can sneak into places.
Yeah. We actually see soon just how adept she is with ductwork.
Yeah.
That's right. I don't know, the whole thing is like, it is one of those funny bits, because it's like, did she really need to sneak in here?
Right.
I guess what they're maybe saying, and maybe she did this specifically for Loki, is the fact that there is this element she may be trying to make him think that nobody knows she's here because she only came to talk about Barton and wants it to be kind of a covert conversation. And so...
Oh, I absolutely believe that.
But that means she's posing, like this whole sneaking up on him is all part of her design.
Sure.
Yeah. And don't you think that's what we reveal later in a minute or two? Like, oh, I'm so sad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, totally. Yeah. It's just funny that at this point, it's just like...
The deception started before,
right.
off screen just a little bit, yeah.
But it's like, this reminds me of the young child running through the streets of Kolkata who clearly doesn't need to be running in order to convince Bruce to come with her. But this is that same thing. Like, she's going through all of these extra steps just to get in here to make him think these things. And she's probably just like in the back of her mind, like, God, the things I have to do just to go through this process of getting this information from somebody.
She was hiding there for 3 hours.
She's been there the whole time.
She was here when Fury was here earlier. What is the term? I'm totally blanking. The life decoy. Life model decoy.
LMD.
That's sitting in the conference up at the conference room.
Yeah. I like that this is one of the only times probably that Loki is obviously caught off guard. You know, I guess that's the best way to say it. You know, most of the time when he's interacting with someone, it's on his terms. He has engaged them, I guess, except for when Thor just grabs him off the ship or whatever. But for the most part, he doesn't do anything that he doesn't want to do. And so now he's finding himself in a room with someone else that he didn't, orchestrate. So I like that he's on the back foot, I guess, or he's playing defense now.
The conversation is a nice one. And the fact that she kind of set this whole thing up just to have this covert conversation with him. I mean, it plays nice. And obviously she's doing it in a way where she's going to be making him think that she's doing exactly what he wants. And it's just like, it plays really well. I like the way that she does this. Even if it is the third time that she's used this tactic in the film, you know what? It's
the only thing she's got, Andy. Don't
it's either
take this away.
It's either that or sneaking up on people. She does it to Bruce too. That's 2 for 2.
Just sneaking everywhere.
I bet she did it with the Russians as well. Oh, man.
Seeing Loki in this costume, guys, that's the same guy from minute 1 that gets that scepter. I finally figured out who that was way back in minute 1. Yeah.
You finally got there?
Yeah.
We finally get enough of the costume to go, oh, him.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm so glad you pointed that out.
Call back.
You know what we were talking about, though, and this is funny, just going back to minute 1 because of this, but when he's talking to the other, we do get to see that the other has the 6 fingers.
Yeah.
And so now we don't know who is actually the person giving.
Oh, right. I just listened to that.
Yeah, we don't know who's actually giving the scepter to Loki because it's not the other and it's not Thanos. So I don't know if it's a Chitauri. I'm not exactly sure who.
It's Ebony Maw.
Right. It's just we'll have to compare arms when we get to a point where we can see his arms to see.
Is that an anchor tattoo? It's Popeye, you guys. Popeye
is part of the MCU.
So weird. I'm sure I heard that gurgling in the background of the Chitauri.
I bet if we look really hard, we'll see a can of an open spinach laying on the ground somewhere out there. All right. So we're getting this interesting conversation between Loki and Natasha about the whole idea of the tortures, and she would come here as this balm and everything. And I don't know, I guess I found it interesting, the idea that perhaps she's early, at least the way that he's thinking it, because it kind of like he figured that she would come after being tortured, but here she is. And so I guess it is, I guess, again, this speaks to that idea of this being a secret conversation that she didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah, so is he saying that Fury is going to would ultimately resort to torture, and then she would be the good cop, I guess? Why? Mm-hmm. I don't know. She says that you were expecting me.
You figured I'd come. Why?
I don't necessarily understand, because these two have really no connection, I guess, other than Barton, of course. So thinking about it, that does make sense that now they're both, without saying it, that yes, this is a secret conversation because you have Barton. I guess that makes sense, but I don't know why he thinks. I don't know.
It's kind of frustrating, and here's part of my frustration. And again, going back to this thing about this is round 3 of her using this tactic. Loki knows everything he knows about all of these people because he has Clint in his control, and Clint has filled him in on all of these details. We've really been able to gather this. I mean, he knew about Captain America when he showed up in Stuttgart. Like, he has all of this information about all these characters. He knows a lot about Natasha, as we'll find out in the coming minutes. Yet he doesn't know that this is a tactic that she uses of this kind of like the way that she plays people like this. And it's interesting. And I guess I'd really have to think about this scene to see, is the way that she decided to approach this. Obviously, she would know that Clint would have told him all of this.
Yeah.
Because she's certainly going to faux react to it all later. But is she taking this approach by coming early and using this tactic, even though Loki potentially knows she would use this tactic, but deciding to focus on Barton as the way to kind of, in Loki's mind, get past the idea that this is the tactic, if that makes any sense?
Right.
There's a lot going on there.
I know. I think I was confusing myself as I was saying.
That's a real Irish knot that you've just created, I think. But part of it is, deep down, Loki, we know Loki wishes he'd gotten Natasha and not Barton.
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those arrows came in handy in Stuttgart.
Yeah, that's true. He'll have another handy arrow in a short while.
That's true. That's true.
I think all this makes me realize that I wish I had a 30-second scene between Barton and Loki where almost, this is so weird because I made a comparison to Two Towers in minute 1 of a Grima Wormtongue and, all that. I need the scene where where Wormtongue is telling Saruman, like, this is what Theoden is going to do. He's going to take the women and children to Helm's Deep. He's going to do this. He's going to do this. And so I need a scene here where Barton says, Fury's going to do this. He's going to come at you with torture. Then Black Widow is going to come at you with, the good cop or something to let us see that Barton is sharing all of this information and the tactics and strategy. Just give us something like that. I think would go a long way to making this sequence make a little bit more sense.
I don't have as much of a problem with her sneaking up and that being her superpower, like using it multiple times. That's not a thing I ever really second guess. I think my bigger issue is the more the Loki centric motivation. I don't actually have a problem that maybe Barton, like I feel like it might be a bridge too far, assuming that Barton would have told him everything about her and her like abilities. That feels like unfair rationalization to this scene. But I do wonder a little bit why she needs to go to such lengths to get this out of him, and why it's so easy for her to do so. I just feel like Loki's a little bit soft here. And part of that is biased about what we've seen from Loki since. Like he's just a more interesting and compelling character than in later pieces. And here he's kind of wishy-washy to the needs of the plot. And I don't find that as satisfying. And I think that's what's on display here. He's an unsatisfying variant. Let's just say, calling a spade a spade.
If you played it a little bit more arrogant, that you mortals couldn't possibly trick me. I'm the god of mischief. I am the king of tricks. You're just a mortal. You couldn't possibly get one over on me. Like play a little bit more like that.
Tale out of it.
His arrogance and his refusal to believe that someone could fool him.
But as we've said a number of times, I think on this show, it's like I think they still didn't know what they had in Tom Hiddleston, in his portrayal of this character, and how much people would like to spend more time with him.
Yeah, that's possible. But I also think that, it boils down to the writers, putting pen to page and coming up with lines and situations. And I think there were ways to maybe craft this where it could have actually played a little stronger. I mean, I still think it's a fun scene, and I do enjoy this cat and mouse game that these two are playing here, and the way that the resolution is a great surprise, even if I, have to kind of close off the idea in the back of my head that Loki, of all people, should know this from Clint, that she uses this sort of tactic, and being the god of mischief, this is exactly his sort of tactic. So you would think that he would really know that she's doing something like this with him. But,
The other way to look at this is how crafty and smart Natasha is. She would now know, okay, Barton's been compromised. Barton would tell him all of my tricks. So I have to do something that Barton wouldn't know about. The Barton wouldn't know to tell him, this isn't something I would normally do. So maybe we're not giving her enough credit that she's come up with this plan because it's something that Barton wouldn't know.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. That this is what the Avengers do: is they take things into their own hands and they act. And like this was her plan. Maybe nobody knew anything about what she was going to do. Fury maybe didn't know. Maybe it's legitimately she is playing her own sort of game of innocent, or possum or whatever, in order to get what she needs, and she is successful for the needs of the plot.
I really want there to be something like, the conversation between Vicini and the Dread Pirate Roberts as Vicini is figuring out all of this stuff. Like, what I know, and I know,
right.
like that whole thing.
You go down that road, it becomes well, he'll know that I'm going to do this, and well, that means I'm going to do this, and
Right.
Well, the movie doesn't need that because we just did it right here on the podcast. Send him to this minute.
But now I really want a shirt, Pete. This is for you of Loki and Natasha sitting on opposite sides of that little stump with the iocane powder, trying to decide if they're going to drink it or not. Like that to me is just pure magic. All right. Well, that's pretty much it for Minute 64. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about Minute 65, more of this conversation. So we'll be talking more about Loki and Natasha. That's it for today. Travis, remind everybody about what you're up to and where they can find it.
At some point, you can check out Minute of Thieves. It's a Movies by Minutes project I'm doing on Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So look out for that. Currently, it's on, we've got an Instagram account, Minute of Thieves. So follow that, and then you'll be aware once the show airs.
Fantastic. Check for that in the show notes, everybody. We'll have that along with other links for Travis's projects, so you can find it all in the show notes. If you don't see it in the show notes in your podcatcher, just go to our website, marvelmovieminute.com, and you can get everything there. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about Minute 65. So, Pete, thanks as always.
Never go against an Asgardian when death is on the line.
To the pain.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.